Nuclear Roulette. The Only Way to Win is to Stop Playing, by Jeffrey Goldberg. On October 27, 1962, the 12th day of the Cuban Missile Crisis, a bellicose and rattled Fidel Castro asked Nikita Khrushchev, his patron, to destroy America. I believe that the imperialists' aggressiveness makes them extremely dangerous, Castro wrote in a cable to Moscow, and that if they managed to carry out an invasion of Cuba, a brutal act in violation of universal and moral law, then that would be the moment to eliminate this danger forever in an act of the most legitimate self-defense. However harsh and terrible the solution, there would be no other. We exist today because Khrushchev rejected Castro's demand. It was Khrushchev, of course, who brought the planet to the threshold of extinction by placing missiles in Cuba, but he had underestimated the American response to the threat. Together with his adversary, John F. Kennedy, he lurched his way toward compromise. In your cable of October 27th, you proposed that we would be the first to carry out a nuclear strike against the enemy's territory, Khrushchev responded. Naturally, you understand where that would lead us. It would not be a simple strike, but the start of a thermonuclear world war. Dear comrade Fidel Castro, I find your proposal to be wrong, even though I understand your reasons. Castro was 36 years old during the missile crisis. He was 84 when I met him, in Havana, in late summer 2010. He was in semi-retirement, though he was still Cuba's indispensable man. I spent a week with him, discussing, among other things, the nuclear age and its diabolical complexities. He still embraced the cruel dogmas of communist revolution, but he was also somewhat reflective about his mistakes. I was deeply curious about his October 27th cable, and I put this question to him. At a certain point, it seemed logical for you to recommend that the Soviets bomb the U.S. Does what you recommend still seem logical now? His answer: after I've seen what I've seen, and knowing what I know now, it wasn't worth it. The problem with wisdom is that it tends to come slowly, if it comes at all. As a species, we are not particularly skilled at making time-pressured, closely reasoned decisions about matters of life and death. The sociobiologist E.O. Wilson described the central problem of humanity this way. We have Paleolithic emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. The main challenge of the 80 years since the Trinity atomic test has been that we do not possess the cognitive, spiritual, and emotional capabilities necessary to successfully manage nuclear weapons without the risk of catastrophic failure. Khrushchev and Castro both made terrifying mistakes of analysis and interpretation during the missile crisis. So too did the several of Kennedy's advisors, including General Curtis LeMay, the Air Force Chief of Staff, who argued that a naval blockade of Cuba, unaccompanied by the immediate bombing of missile sites, was almost as bad as the appeasement at Munich. Today, the Global Operations Center of the U.S. Strategic Command, which oversees America's nuclear forces, is housed in the Offutt Air Force Base building named for LeMay. This decision has always struck me as an indirect endorsement by America's nuclear establishment of the bias toward action embodied by the sometimes Strangelovian LeMay. Bias towards action is an all-purpose phrase, but I first heard it in the context of nuclear warfare many years ago from Bruce Blair, a scholar of non-proliferation and a former Air Force missile launch officer. It means that the nuclear decision-making scripts that presidents are meant to follow in a crisis assume that Russia, or other adversaries, will attempt to destroy American missiles while they are still in their silos. The goal of nuclear war planners has traditionally been to send their missiles on their way before they can be neutralized. In the parlance of nuclear planning, to launch on warning. Many of the men who served as presidents since 1945 have been shocked to learn about the impossibly telescoped time frame in which they have to decide whether to launch. The issue is not one of authority. Presidents are absolute nuclear monarchs, and they can do what they wish with America's nuclear weapons. Please see Tom Nichols' article, The President's Weapon, in this issue. The challenge, as George W. Bush memorably put it, is that a president wouldn't even have time to get off the crapper before having to make a launch decision, a decision that could be based on partial, contradictory, or even false information. Ronald Reagan, when he assumed the presidency, was said to have been shocked that he would have as little as 6 minutes to make a decision to launch. Barack Obama thought that it was madness to expect a president to make such a decision, the most important that would ever be made by a single person in all of human history, in a matter of minutes. We are living through one of the more febrile periods of the nuclear era. The contours of World War III are visible in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Russia has been aided by Iran and North Korea, and opposed by Europe and, for the time being, the United States. Pakistan and India, two nuclear states, recently fought a near war. Iran, which has for decades sought the destruction of Israel through terrorism and other means, has seen its nuclear sites come under attack by Israel, in what could be termed an act of non-proliferation by force. North Korea continues to expand its nuclear arsenal, and South Korea and Japan, as Ross Anderson details somewhere in this issue, are considering going nuclear in response. Humans will need luck to survive this period. We have been favored by fortune before, and not only during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Over the past 80 years, humanity has been saved repeatedly by individuals who possessed unusually good judgment in situations of appalling stress. Two in particular, Stanislav Petrov and John Kelly, spring to my mind regularly, for different reasons. Petrov is worth understanding because, under terrible pressure, he responded skeptically to an attack warning, quite possibly saving the planet. Kelly did something different, but no less difficult. He steered an unstable president away from escalation and toward negotiation. In September 1983, Petrov was serving as the deputy officer at Soviet Command Center when its warning system reported that the United States had launched 5 missiles at Soviet targets. Relations between the U.S. and the USSR were tense. Just 3 weeks earlier, the Soviets had shot down a civilian South Korean airliner. Petrov defied established protocols governing such an alert and declared the launch warning to be false. He understood that the detection system was new and only partially tested. He also knew that Soviet doctrine held an American attack, should it come, would be overwhelming, and not a mere 5 missiles. He reported to his superiors that he believed the attack warning to be a mistake, and he prevented a nuclear exchange between the two superpowers by doing so. Later, it was determined that a Soviet satellite had mistakenly interpreted the interplay between clouds and the sun over Montana and North Dakota as missile site launches. John Kelly, the retired 4-star Marine general who served as White House Chief of Staff for part of Donald Trump's first term, is known for his Sisyphean labors on behalf of order in an otherwise anarchic decision-making environment. Kelly, during his 17 months as Chief of Staff, understood that Trump was particularly dangerous on matters of national security. Trump was ignorant of world affairs, Kelly believed, and authoritarian by instinct. Kelly experienced these flaws directly in 2017 when Trump regularly insulted the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, who was widely regarded as inexperienced and unstable himself. After North Korea threatened physical action against its enemies, Trump said,
"They will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before."
Kelly repeatedly warned Trump that such language could cause Kim, eager to prove his bona fides to the senior generals around him, to overreact by attacking South Korea. But Trump continued tweeting, "Military solutions are now fully in place, locked and loaded, should North Korea attack unwisely. Hopefully Kim Jong-un will find another path." Kim later responded by firing missiles over Japan and calling Trump a mentally deranged U.S. dotard. According to reporting in Michael S. Schmidt's book, Donald Trump v. the United States, Inside the Struggle to Stop a President, Kelly told Trump, "You're pushing him to prove he's a man. If you push him into a corner, he may strike out. You don't want to box him in." Schmidt wrote, "The President of the United States had no appreciation for the fact that he could bring the country not just to the brink of war at any moment, but a nuclear war that could easily escalate into the most dangerous one in world history." Kelly realized that his warnings to Trump weren't penetrating, so he played, instead, on Trump's insecurities, and on his need to be a hero, or, at the very least, a salesman. "No president since North Korea became a communist dictatorship has ever tried to reach out," Kelly told Trump, according to Schmidt. "No president has tried to reason with this guy. You're a big deal maker. Why don't you do that?" Kelly's diversion worked. Trump quickly became enamored of the idea that he would achieve a history-making rapprochement with North Korea. Kelly understood that such a deal was far-fetched, but the pursuit of a chimera would cause Trump to stop threatening nuclear war. Trump remains an unstable leader in a world far more unstable than it was during his first term. No president has ever been anything close to a perfect steward of America's national security, and its nuclear arsenal, but Trump is less qualified than almost any previous leader to manage a nuclear crisis. Only the late-stage, frequently inebriated Richard Nixon was arguably more dangerous. Trump is highly reactive, sensitive to insult, and incurious. It is unfair to say that he is unlikely to wake up one morning and decide to use nuclear weapons. He has spoken intermittently about loathing of such weapons, and of war more generally. But he could very easily mismanage his way, again, into an escalating spiral. The successful end of the Cold War caused many people to believe that the threat of nuclear war had receded. It has historically been difficult to get people to think about the unthinkable. In an article for this magazine in 1947, Albert Einstein explained, "The public has been warned of the horrible nature of atomic warfare, has done nothing about it, and to a large extent has dismissed the warning from its consciousness. A danger that cannot be averted and perhaps better to be forgotten, or a danger against which every possible precaution has been taken also had probably better be forgotten." We forget at our peril. We forget that 80 years ago, the world-changing summer of 1945, Russia and the United States alone possess enough nuclear firepower to destroy the world many times over. We forget that China is becoming a near-peer adversary of the U.S. We forget that the history of the nuclear age is filled with near misses, accidents, and wild misinterpretations of reality. And we forget that most humans aren't quite as creative, independent-minded, and perspicacious as Stanislav Petrov and John Kelly. Most of all, we forget the rule articulated by the mathematician and cryptologist Martin Hellman. The only way to survive Russian roulette is to stop playing.